up on some of the things that contractors can do to be more successful. And there's a guide I'll be posting in this channel that talks about 13 operational failures that cause federal contractors. Now, this is for the federal government. If you're working or want to work for the federal government, as you know, it's a great client, yet they have way more requirements. And we have done tons of projects for the federal government. I much rather work for a federal client that it's a client that we align in vision, mission, and values, that it's across the United States, than working sometimes for clients close to me that have a poor philosophy of payment. That's how impactful aligning with a client is. It's like getting married. You want to marry somebody that aligns with you, because the principle of payment is crucial for a company, a small company, and a large company to proceed. I've worked with large companies, and they are very conscious about cash flow. And so should we, even though no matter how small we are. The smaller we are, the more important cash flow is. So there's 3 points I want to share with you when working for the federal government. When you get an award, as we discussed yesterday, tiny bit, the award does not mean that you have revenue. It doesn't mean that you have cash in the bank. An award is a great thing. It's a great news. It's just called backlog. In other industries, it's like sales. They can account for that as revenue, right? But for us, no. Until we get the work done, or a portion of the work done, it doesn't account as revenue in our financial statements. So until the cost is incurred and there's proof of it, there's an invoice from a trade partner, a vendor, there's proof that the work was installed, we cannot account for it as revenue based on the percentage that we describe in the schedule of value. So there is a gap between the time you receive the award. That's why it's important to be very careful as thinking that you received an award, a contract award, not just won the project, but a contract award for the federal government. I'm being specific with the federal government in this video, and thinking that you already have that money. Like, for example, spending the money or utilizing the money for other than what this contract is intended for. If you have to get prepared to fulfill the contract, that's a different story. But being very mindful that you have a budget, that you committed to the government and you committed to your company, to yourself. The gap that I'm talking to you about between award and NTP, it's very crucial that you understand that many clients in our industry, sometimes they wait 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. It can be a huge gap. In that time frame, you are spending money to fulfill the contract, yes, but you will not get a return. You will not even be able to collect from that. It will impact your cash flow in some time, right? So let's say, let me give you an example. Let's say you have a design bill. And the design bill, as you know, you have to design the project. It's part of your contract. You gave a price to design and also to build. In that time frame that you're designing the project, you're using resources, you're using time, you're using, quite a bit of time to fulfill the design. And the design could perfectly take anywhere from, depending on the size of the project, it could take a year. And in that time frame, the amount of money that you will get, it's not going to be sufficient to justify the expense that you have to have. That means that you want to make sure that you have cash flow allocated to fulfill that. Yes, you will get paid for sure. How long do you need how soon do you need the money is the question. How do you plan your budget and your company to fulfill that payroll? Because it's probably high level payroll, people that are creating a design. You have to discuss with the architect. This is where transfer is risk. Risk is transfer when you get an award. So in the design build process, in the design process, you are trying to make sure that that risk is allocated in the budget that you intended for. What do I mean by that? The design has to have a lot of clarity and try to avoid confusion. Confusion costs money. With that design, which includes the specifications, you're going to have to go make sure that there's a trade partner or a group of trade partners fulfilling the requirement in the contract. Meaning that they're going to have like a manual, a guide that they are going to take when the design is completely approved, and they're going to use it to build. That process, right? Making sure that the level of clarity is so good that we avoid confusion and questions as much as possible. That's what we want to do. That's what you want to do. You want to partner with the right trade partners, the right stakeholders, to make sure that you are your team. We are our team, our people. People, I believe, is the most important thing in our industry. I don't think there's anything more important. Culture, people. In reality, we're building people in the process. The more aligned people are with you, your company, your culture, your values, your mission, the more success the project will have. So going back to that gap, the first point I want to make, that gap between the time you get an award and the time you're able to build something, right? You receive an NTP, which means notice to proceed. Without an NTP, you cannot do anything on a project. What you will be able to build is your payment and performance bond. You will be able to build for your insurance. Many times they allow you to do that, both payment and performance bond and your insurance as well. You want to ask for that, ask to get paid for that. Why? Because your bonding company is going to ask you for the money to pay for the bond, which is a must. It's a must. So they're going to want to get that money. And the more you can pay with money that you received from the owner, the more protected your cash flow is. So that's a job that belongs to you. How do you organize your schedule of value in such a way that your cash flow is optimized? But also, how do you organize your processes and your systems and procedure so the design can be done as fast as possible? So the other processes of approval are done as fast as possible. You want to make sure you follow up, you answer questions from trade partners, from the client, and you're on top of it. Don't start hiring everybody that you could potentially need in the project. Because if you do that, your budget might get out of whack. Unless you have a lot of people and you're a large company, which I don't think that's the case. You want to protect your cash flow. So that's one message. Look, the federal government has very, very streamlined processes. Some people don't like that. They are, especially if you work for the Department of Defense, which I prefer. I love it. Because for me, the more clarity and the expectations I have as a vendor, as a GC, as a vendor, the more opportunities I have to be successful. That's my point of view. Some people they have a belief that it's too much work. It's too much work. It's a lot of work and I don't they want too much paperwork, and that's what I hear. I don't like to work for the government. It's a lot of people, and thank you for joining, Yvette. Thank you. There's a lot of people, and there's those kind of excuses. But let me tell you, that is actually stupid, because we need to know what you want in order to fulfill my customers' expectations. I need to know what you want, and if I know upfront and it's clear, detailed, right, one by one, and there's a lot of clarity, I should be able to organize myself to fulfill it. That's what's expected in the federal government. If you are a small company, if you're an 8A, a women-owned, whatever certification you have, it doesn't matter. You are hired to fulfill a promise, and it's clear in the contract. So once you have the NTP, now there's another process that you need to make sure happens as smooth as possible, which is the process that it's going to allow you to build momentum in the field. You don't have to wait for the NTP to start this process. You could start this anytime you want, but you know that any expenses that you have incurred and charged to the job, the sooner you start, right, it's going to have to wait until you are able to bill for that item in your schedule of value. So you know your company, and you know what you can afford to spend, and then how long are you able to wait to collect. So here's the thing. You want to have a really good understanding on submittals, on shop drawings, on schedule of values, right? The schedule of value that you create for the client, many times it's done at the beginning. When you submit your price, you're committing to a schedule of value, and that schedule of value is going to commit you. You're not going to be able to make much changes. So be very careful on how you design your schedule of value, how truthful it is to the reality, on how you will fulfill the contract. Be mindful of that. It's not something that you want to do, without planning and organizing. The more knowledge you have in the cost of your project, the better schedule of value you will be able to produce. The more knowledge you have in the schedule of value that the trade partners are going to require or ask from you, or make sense for them and you, the better off you will be. So in that process, when you get your NTP, your notice to proceed, you are going to have to be submitting schedule of values, submittals, shop drawings, mobilization plan, among many other things, long lead items, schedules. All of that is going to go through an approval process. Now, you could submit this the first day after NTP. A lot of times the owners, the federal owners, they send you an award and they start asking, sometimes it takes less time than others, when can we schedule? We're ready to start. When can we schedule a pre-construction meeting, a meeting before construction starts? Sometimes they agree with you to an NTP date. Sometimes they don't. You want to be ready, which means when they give you that NTP, it should be great news. That's amazing. I'm so happy. It shouldn't be, I'm not ready. It should be great news. We're ready to start. We're ready to build. NTP means you're able to start building momentum towards the submittal of a schedule of value that will tentatively be approved, hopefully the first time, by the client, that will align you with the way the contract will proceed and how it's going to be built. This schedule of value, which means schedule of cost values, right? The cost of every single activity, there is a requirement to break it down in the specifications. That's a submittal, that's a specs section that you want to become familiar with. And we can have another video on how do you build a schedule of value, the smart way, to maximize your cash flow potential. So So when you create the schedule of value, right, the client is going to want to expect approve it based on what they told you way earlier before you submitted a price. It's a requirement. Sometimes they tell you, you cannot bill me in one single activity more than this amount. You cannot bill me in more than blah blah blah. They tell you, they give you the specifics. So you want to look at your specification section ahead of time. So you build your schedule of value in a way that it's fair for them and fair for you. It's going to help you facilitate, fulfill the contract in the most efficient way. So that's the schedule of value. You want to make sure you put everything that is a long lead item. The long lead items are procured way at the beginning. Sometimes long lead items take months, 8 months, 12 months. It depends. And you want to be ready to be able to do that. In the pandemic, I remember that we had items that were taking, roofing material was taking months to arrive. And it was going to be impacting heavily the schedule of a contract. We were doing a project for the USPS, and the roofing material was not even available. With the government, you're not able. Thank God we didn't suffer the tariff issues impacted by tariffs much, or by the delays of shipping that happened in the pandemic, because the federal government is Buy American only. So there's a clause in the federal government, in the FAR, that you can only buy American-made material only. So you can have a product that is American-made, but if the project has a screw that was made in anywhere that is not the US, it's not going to be approved unless you can prove really good that there is not available in the US. So make sure, because all these things will delay your approval process. And when a submittal shop drawing schedule is delayed, okay, it just means your payment is delayed. That schedule of value, which is the way the cost of the project will be evaluated and approved throughout the project, is one of the most important activities for you to focus on. I would say, when a project starts, I'm always thinking, when am I going to receive my first payment? First payment is a metric that I follow, because if the first payment is done in a reasonable amount of time, then that means the rest will flow. When it doesn't, and I've had this situation, it's painful, right? Because you have trade partners asking for payment, you have payroll to meet, you have this and the other. You want to make sure you develop systems to make sure that you can submit a schedule of value and it gets approved within 30 days. Why wouldn't that be a great metric? That's the metric I give myself. So that's an advice I give you that has served us. It used to be that it would take us sometimes months to get a schedule of value approved. And it was something that if we could have probably controlled. The more knowledge we have during the estimating process, and the more knowledge we transfer to the operations process, so they can build a schedule of value and get it approved faster, the better off we are. So for last, I want to talk to you about a process of quality control process that the federal government has. And it's a process that the quality control format, I want to say the federal government in general, because many people copy from the Department of Defense. But the Army Corps of Engineers uses a process to approve work in the field. And this process, it just coordinates the sequence of the work. And it's it's divided. It's a quality control process. That's how it's called. And you actually get a certification for it. So if you decide to work for the government, I would say get it. And even if you don't, it would help your company because I think it's very good. One is preparatory phase. The next one is initial phase. And there's a follow-up phase. The preparatory